Hello and welcome to another episode of Legendary Leaders, the podcast. I'm delighted to have you here and to introduce you to a wonderful guest. But let me ask you a question first. When you were a kid, what did you pretend to be? Spoiler alert, I'm going to share a story about playing in the garden as a child and pretending to follow a certain profession. I'm not going to share yet what it was, but I can tell you that it definitely was something that I followed in my real professional career, at least for a long period of time. But what was it for you? Did you pretend to be a teacher, an astronaut, an architect perhaps, or shopkeeper? What was it for you? And then be really honest, how much of that imaginative spark still shows up in your work today? Or are you followed by this belief that other people may judge your choices or your weird creativity that you may show in the day-to-day? Because many people, me included, often believe, what might other people think of me if I do X, Y, and Z? Might they be judging me? Even though, and I'm pretty sure you all know that, people often don't even think as much about us as we believe them to do. So let's bring that creativity and that imaginative spark back into our lives, shall we? At least a little bit. And that's what our guest today, Laura Venezia, is going to help us with, because her childhood game of school wasn't just pretend. It was some sort of a prophecy, I would even call it. Long before she stepped into classrooms across the US, China, Hong Kong, and now Germany, Laura was already practicing what would become her life's calling, nurturing good people. Getting goosebumps just saying nurturing good people. It's so much needed in today's world. Laura has more than 20 years of experience as an educational leader. But what makes her truly, truly legendary is her deep commitment to the hearts of education, not just the minds. And in a world that is obsessed with performance and outcomes, Laura dares to ask, what if our number one job as leaders of children, teams, communities, and most importantly ourselves, is simply to help people become kind, thoughtful, and fully themselves? Let that sink in. Help people become kind, thoughtful, and fully themselves. So in today's episode, we talk about purpose, play, and the quiet power of knowing who you are. Laura shares how early connections with great teachers shaped her, how international moves challenged her, and why her leadership today is rooted in compassion, inclusivity, and humanity. This is a conversation full of light bulb moments and the kind of honesty that lingers long after the episode ends. So here's a question I would like you to ponder on before you step into today's conversation. What did you love doing before the world told you what you should do? And what would it take to bring more of that into your leadership today? Well, let's dive in and get to know Laura and hear about her story. Enjoy. Hello and welcome, Laura. It's such a joy to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. It is honestly such a privilege to be here.
I want to give that back. You know what you've actually created. As always, I have pre-chats with my guests, getting to know one another, see where we are going with this conversation, which, by the way, changes pretty frequently again when we're having a chat. And you mentioned very naturally some powerful things that made me stop, think, that even gave me goosebumps. One of those was when, even in early childhood, I knew it's my thing to work with children. And that leads me right away into who you are, what you're doing, and how you knew that was your thing.
Absolutely. You're right. It was just something that I don't even know if I put that much thought into it anymore. It's just my sense of being. It's just who I am and what I do. So it's something that I don't stop to reflect on too much. But it has been something growing up. I know my games with my with my friends at home was always playing school. We just pretend to be the teachers and, take turns teaching each other things that we had no idea what we were doing, but pretending to write on the board and hold these sessions. And it was before we were even in school. And that kind of naturally led me through life. I had some amazing teachers that I can remember throughout my career that always just felt like they always saw me and knew who I was and I could connect with them. And that just felt like such a natural progression. So when it came time to figure out what I was going to do, I don't even think it was a thought. It was just a natural, of course, I'm going to be a teacher. That's who I'm going to be, because that's who I am.
I find it so incredible that you knew it, that you went onto this path and you continued this path, seemingly to me, with real passion and dedication. And I'm pretty sure the listeners will understand what I mean latest by the end of this conversation. But you again made me think, or go back into my childhood. I was originally trained in retail on the shop floor doing an apprenticeship, right? And what we played as children underneath a willow tree is having a retail store and selling dresses. And I was now connecting to, do we have something in our genes that comes up pretty early and we are not aware of? But suddenly we actually step into that space when we are older and grown up.
Yeah. It's just like we have that sense. It's at our core.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I can't wait to talk about your journey that has taken you to different places, different environments, working with different children and parents. But another thing that you mentioned to me that was the most powerful phrase, that is, I want to help make good people. And damn, do we need good people in this world at the moment, and always. But that was powerful. So where does that come from? What does it mean for you as well?
This has been something that really has evolved probably over my career. So it's been 20 years that I've been in the field of early childhood education, and I've gone through different, as you mentioned, different countries. My journey started in America, where I grew up and I studied. That quickly led me, after graduation, to China, of why not experience the world a little bit before settling in. The famous last words of, I'm only going to be gone for a year, and it's been 13. So my passion and I guess my purpose of making good people has really evolved in my last 15 years or so. And I think it has come and built on the experiences that I have had. I've worked with so many amazing children, colleagues. I've worked with some brilliant parents as well. And we all have this common goal. We can all read the news. We can see what's going on. And it's so hard sometimes. And especially within schools, we see how bullying is, so prevalent in some places, and the effect that that's really having on mental health. And it all starts in early childhood. And if we can really take the time to instill what it means to be a good person, then we're really setting ourselves up for a much better future, and hopefully a caring, an inclusive, and very embracive future that we could have.
So for you personally, what does it mean to be a good person? And I would even include some of the words you've just mentioned, right? Inclusive, for example. What's a good person?
Yeah, a good person is someone who is kind, who is understanding, who is patient and willing to listen and understand other perspectives, who's there to give space and understand that people do need space, to know that we all have emotions and those are okay. They're powerful. They're giving us information, but how we express those and how we respond to them. So just knowing the appropriate ways to do that and giving people space to be who they are, accepting who they are. And I think one thing that is really important is to know that we don't all have to be friends. That's not a goal that we have in life. It's not a reality, but we all have to respect each other. And so that's really something that I focus on a lot with conversations with children.
I love that. I had parents hour this week when we sit down with the individuals in kindergarten, and when you talk about your child and their development. And I had that this week. And one of them said to me, Harry is my son, he's 4 years old. And they are like, you speak a lot about emotions at home. Now, I'm a coach. Yes, we speak a lot about emotions at home. We have books full of recognize your emotions. Mm-hmm. And they're like, this is so noticeable. When he's angry, he says, I need a minute. I'm angry right now. Taking a time out. Or this is my body. This is my decision. You have to give me that space. This is how he talks. And then it makes me laugh. And I had this proud moment when I'm like, oh, it sinks in, because you never quite know at this age if it lands when we read these stories.
Yeah.
And this morning we had a chat about, given that I had a bit of challenging feedback yesterday, how he behaved towards another boy. And I said to him, do you remember the book, Kindness Makes Me? And he's like, stronger. I'm like, exactly. So let's be kind. You don't have to be best friends, but let's be kind, you know?
Exactly. Yes.
And I find it incredible when we have these conversations, because I always remind myself in the same moment of being kind. And that everybody, you know, struggles with something or needs perhaps a dose of kindness that day. So it's kind of, you lead others and you lead yourself in the same moment.
Yes. Yeah. And we can still show kindness in hard times. And I think that is a special gift that we can give, of we're having a bad day, but we can still choose kindness. And it's okay, have those emotions, but children, we are the role models for the children in our lives, whether they be our own children or children that we're caring for. And that is something that we are the role models, that we can share that. But at the same time, acknowledge, yes, I'm having a bad day too. I didn't sleep well, and that's okay. And I'm still able to show this kindness here.
Yeah, I'm loving this. In your day-to-day role, working with parents, working with children, working with the educators, right? How do you instill this important value?
Yes, that's, I think it goes, again, being a leader, first, I have to be the role model. So how I show up every day matters, and how I show up, what I hope will then trickle down and spread wide, and be able to show how we do that. And it is something we talk a lot about, perspectives, and we do a lot of reframing as well. Of, we can always respond initially to something. We can have a very quick response to a conversation or a behavior that we see in the classroom. But when we take that pause and we step back and say, okay, what else is happening around? What could be triggering that? And is it is it a fault? Their reaction doesn't reflect who they are as a person, because we do have unconscious responses. And that is something that I think we have to give grace to, and see those reactions that are instantaneous don't represent who we are as a person, because then it's what we do next with that. And what's the next step? Do we, you would never get upset with someone for shouting after they get scared, because it's just a response. So if something happens in a classroom or a discussion that you have and there's an immediate response, we're all human. What's our next step? And I think that's where the deep work happens. What is that next step that we're taking to show who we are as a person, and how we're choosing kindness, empathy, inclusion, and respect with the other person that we're with.
Now, you are leading an international kindergarten, right? Where geographically there is a lot of diversity. And there's probably a lot of diversity in how we define certain values. So that brings an additional, from my perspective, very beautiful complexity to the mix and to your work. So how much does the role of culture influence our day-to-day behaviors, and how do you lead through those complexities as well?
I have to say, being in an international school, in our setting, we do have around 50 nationalities represented in our setting. So it is such a rich cultural space, and it makes us stronger. If I use that same way, it does make us stronger because we are not in a way stuck in one view, in one version. We have other ideas and perspectives and thoughts that are brought into our decisions and our conversations. And at first, it's something we talk a lot about, of how might this be different from a different cultural perspective, and what does it mean for us? Yes, we are influenced by the culture around us and where we are geographically and everything. But at the end of the day, within our walls, we have our culture in our school setting. And we know that we are in a unique position, and we get to define what it means to be a member of our school. And we talk about that. And what does that look like for us? And how do we represent who we are within this space?
Now, I'm going to weave in your own experience, because you mentioned already you have lived in different spaces. And I'm going to rewind right back to you making the pretty quick decision to, let's go to China. Let's do that for a year. It sounds so easy. It isn't always so easy. So talk us through your decision-making process of saying yes to China, right? Having been there before, and your experience there. Overall, the experience for you and the experience of the educational system as well.
It was a very quick decision, and it was a spontaneous one as well. It was never on my radar to move abroad, but having just finished my undergraduate degree and being in my relationship, my husband was like, "What do you think about this?" And initially I thought, I think nothing about that. But it became such an exciting opportunity. I had never traveled extensively abroad. I did one semester in school, but why not? Why not see something else? Why not experience a little bit of the world in what I thought would be before I start my career and settle down and all of that back at home in America? It was quite a shock, such a culture shock, moving over into China. One, just the amount of people that are around you. It was a very big difference. And I settled into my school where I was teaching a larger age group. I was teaching English originally when I started. And I just saw such a different approach and emphasis on education, and a different relationship with it. And there was, a lot of family decisions made around education as well. It was a big part of everyone's life. And there was a lot of respect for what we do and how we're teaching. And there were some parts, I think, not only culturally exclusive, but working with young children, starting to see the pressure that education was having on them was really what drove my focus on emotional intelligence and regulation and mental health for children as well, because I could see the strain that children were under. And this was not limited to one culture or another, but just generally the pressure that was being felt to perform or engage in the educational concepts that we're having. So my shift was kind of going back and forth, and I was thinking, what am I really focusing on? What's important to me? And it was providing the best possible environment of the classroom for the students, while also helping them make sure that they were okay and they felt safe in those settings.
And you shared some impressions with me in our last call. You now talked about it very subtly, touching upon it, that, it's a family decision. It's a very big focus. But the schedule is tough for a Western European. It's really tough. Yeah. And you remember I said to you, I want my child to be a child for as long as he can be, really staying in this childhood space that's playful, that's explorative. And in China, it's very different.
Yes. So my experience was across China. I stayed in China for 1 year, and then I did move over to Hong Kong, where I was working for 9 years. And the education system is not the education system itself, but the Institute of Education is quite differently focused than our, American idea of it, where you go to school at 8:00, you finish at 3, and then you play outside for a while. That was my experience growing up. In this setting, I have worked, I was working with children from the age of 2, and already you could see that pressure happening of handwriting practice was happening. There was homework at the end of the day. Classes would go, extracurricular classes would go late into the night. So you could see that there was such a different emphasis and focus on what childhood was. And it was really a focus on being in settings in where you're building your academic rigor, you could say. And that was a huge shock for me. Based on my previous experiences. And so that was something that I, as an educator, did struggle with a little bit. Does this align with my values, and understanding that is a choice that's being made, and how can I still support that with something that still aligns with how I want to be working with children?
I think it also depends on how we grow up. Right? So if I were to grow up in Hong Kong, then for me, that would be, I don't like the word, but I'm going to use it now anyway. Normal. Yes. It would be normal for me, right? Yes. Because I don't know it any differently. Right? However, I do believe that it has advantages and disadvantages. You develop this discipline, you know a lot, you grow up in a potentially highly intelligent way, knowing about a lot of things, and so on. However, I wonder as to whether there are some risks to this way of learning as well. So if you delve a little bit deeper into those observations, what do you see as risks, challenges?
One of the things that I noticed almost immediately was that the approach was quite individual. So it was children studying on their own, learning, either one-on-one or just writing their own notes, reading on their own. There was a lot of individual learning that happened. Whereas in the settings that I typically work in the way that I, work with children, we do a lot more collaborative work. So there was this big shift of individual work versus collaborative. And so that risk is not developing those same skill sets that you would be able to when you're working with others. And, the ability to have communication, conversations back and forth, active listening, critical thinking, problem solving together, putting that into a group approach. How are we going to solve this? Assigning tasks and roles with each other. Compromising. That's something as well. That's such a huge skill that's missed when you're working independently. So there's a lot of those. I don't like the term soft skills, but that is the word, the phrase that is out there, where you're working on all of those other things, all of those skills that are the foundation for the learning. So we can memorize all day long, but is that going to give us, are we going to be able to apply that into our future lives when we're outside of a learning institution?
I remember being in Hong Kong, and in Asia, I noticed it in general. I spent a bit of time in Shanghai as well, for example. And wherever you go into public transport, it's like this. Phone.
Always on a phone.
and you see it here as well. I mean, to be honest, every time, we spend time in London in the tube, it's exactly the same. Yes. And I sometimes demonstrate like just being there and breathing and not taking my phone out because I'm like, no, I actually don't want to do it. But there I noticed it pretty early on. It's a few years back. And I thought, yeah, how do we interact? How do we communicate? Exactly what you just mentioned. And that leads me to an important question. I believe this is a question many, many parents have. How can we balance technological development, AI, and learning about digital tools and communicating, being, with other people, being social animals?
Yes. It's something I talk with parents a lot about. We cannot avoid technology. It is here and it is here to stay. So just avoiding it completely is, in my opinion, not the way to go, because it will be there. For us, it's about the balance of, are we using technology to enhance learning? We are not replacing learning with technology. We're using it as a tool to enhance the learning. And some of the examples, I have a lot of parents that ask, being in the early years, it is often a question of, when is screen time the right time? How do we minimize? When's too much? And we give examples of, when we're talking about, we're going to go onto the playground, let's check the weather to see what might be the best clothing options to use to go outside. And that's a way that we're using technology as a tool, not as a babysitter or as a passive consumption. It is there for a tool. Today, I had a conversation with some of our children during assembly where we were learning about being knowledgeable. And we talked about, how do we learn things? How do we learn new things? And what I loved was these are a group of 6-year-olds. Their first response was, we can go ask somebody. Their first response was not, let's Google it, because sometimes that is just the answer. And so there are ways that we use technology, and finding that balance of using it to extend or, developing research skills is an amazing way to use technology. But just putting on YouTube and watching videos, and I know it's very, very common to do a lot of, for example, phonics practice with YouTube videos, but it's not building the skills of a back and forth conversation. It is just a passive reception of information that you're getting rather than an exchange.
So what I'm hearing as well is, yes, use it as a tool. However, really strongly balance proper social communication skills, having conversations with your child, a proper dialogue.
Exactly. Or even talking about how you're using it. Okay, what should be the first thing that we want to look up something. How do we do that? Talking through the steps. So you're still getting the input of the conversation and questioning and explanations. You can still use rich vocabulary, and then you use technology as a tool there. But it's not a substitute for anything, and it can't be.
Yeah, let's be honest. It can be very easy to say, you can watch another half an hour. Sure.
Exactly.
I'm the first one to admit that, right? I need a bit of breathing space for a moment. Yes, please. Yeah. But yeah, it is a bit of a minefield for me as a parent, I have to say.
And I think it's only fair to say to anyone out there, of course, that's not going to ruin anything, having that balance. And again, we're all human, and sometimes we just need that extra half hour. And there is no problem with that. Sparingly.
I was just reflecting upon the importance of really getting to know your child as well. It sounds a bit weird given that it is one's child, but truly understanding, ours, for example, is very curious, very inquisitive. What's he inquisitive about? And how can you utilize these passions to have some proper chats with him or test something new out? Yeah. Like yesterday, just to give an example, our terrace is full of ants. So I needed to make a plan how to get rid of them. And he was so curious about it. And then he wanted to help me. So we spent at least 40 minutes outside and just making sure we know where they all are, where their nests are and whatnot. So I could go on about that now forever. Yeah. But there was curiosity. And I could have easily said, let me do it. You can watch, for half an hour. But that was a joint thing to do. And this morning, the first thing he said was, "Oh, I don't see as many anymore. Look at this." And he was really excited about it. And recognizing these moments, which can be hard when you are, preoccupied with all sorts of things that need to be organized in the family and work life, can be easy. And I think it's important to notice those moments. Yes. They are gold.
And they happen. You can't script those. They just happen when you're there, when you're present, and you put all of the other things aside. Those are when those moments really come through. And they're things that you probably wouldn't even think. You can't just randomly start that conversation. It happens from a spark. And then from there, it continues.
Well, speaking of window moments, before we get into your next country that you moved to, what are those window moments? Here we go. In your day-to-day work with your team members, for example, where you have these spontaneous moments of, let's call it teachable moment.
Yes. Those they're great. They just are ones that happen next to the copy machine or in the cafeteria, passing through, having a quick conversation with someone. Or someone just, my office door is always open and someone will just pop in and say, "Hey, I have a question about something." And it just starts those conversations that you can't just schedule that on the calendar. "Hey, we're going to meet, at 10 o'clock today to talk about aha moments." They're just things that happen when you're around and you're listening and you're observing. And you're able to dig in a little bit deeper of, "Oh, that happened today. I'm so curious. What are your follow-up steps going to be?" Or just 2 hours ago, I was in the cafeteria following our assembly this morning about being knowledgeable. And the question was for them to talk about during snack time is, what are something you're already knowledgeable about? And what do you want to be more knowledgeable about? And so I just went in to have a chat, and there was a lot of, I want to be more knowledgeable about football. Yes, that is the popular thing. And someone saying, I'm very knowledgeable about math and I want to be more knowledgeable about Canada. Like, what an interesting thing. Tell me more about that. And those moments and interactions that I get to have with the children spark conversations that I then have with our educators. And they involve themselves as well. They talked about their favorite ways of learning. And one of them was podcasts. And so then we got to talk to the children about, what is a podcast? How does that help us learn? And those moments where they're curious about what's going on and they want to learn alongside us as well. And so it is a relationship that goes between myself, our students, our educators. It's just something that feeds each other.
And you make space for it. And I really want to call that out. I work a lot with big teams in large corporates. And the listeners will have heard that before. Often I hear, "I don't have space for it." And you called out these moments that happen naturally.
Yeah.
But you don't escape them. "Oh, I need to go back to my office now." You stay there. And you become curious as well, and therefore role model the curiosity.
Yeah, it is about space. And that's something I do hear from my team of, we always feel like we can drop by. It is an open door policy. It is, wandering around the halls and just seeing what people are doing and being approachable, knowing, and again, sometimes initiating by asking what's happening, to just start that conversation to see what's going on.
Now, you mentioned earlier on, I don't like the term soft skills.
Yeah.
And I find that fascinating. I have an opinion about the term as well, but yours is far more important right now. How come?
Just that term soft skills makes it sound not important. It makes it sound soft and fluffy and just not so important. Whereas those skills are the foundation of everything else we do. They're the core of how we're able to live the rest of our lives and achieve our goals and learn and interact with others. We need those sets of skills of, empathy and emotional intelligence and communication. those are all just the building blocks of who we are and how we engage with the world around us. So they're not just soft and mushy and, something that it almost is like it doesn't hold weight, whereas they hold everything. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And quite often when I run workshops, so for example, diversity, equity, and inclusion, one of the big topics in this world, right? I always say, you can think it is a soft skill, but if you don't get this right, and you don't really create a sense of belonging, of safety, you're going to lose people. It will have an impact on your bottom line. And I can bring up many, many more results and impacts in order to make sure this is not a soft skill anymore. This is a needed, required, hard skill. And we can talk about many others. And it's important to think through, what's the impact of not having it, of not demonstrating these kind of behaviors?
Absolutely. It can fundamentally break your institution if you don't have those skills. And that's what we are trying to avoid with the children who leave us. We want to set that foundation. We want them to know that their voice matters and that they can use it for good, but they need to know that they have it and how to use it and how to just engage with the people around them in a way that we can come together and we can get through hard times, and then we can celebrate successes, and we can come out the other side having a positive impact on each other, ourselves, and everything around us.
Which speaks very beautifully to, leadership, leading self, leading others, leading the environment, the people around us, and really having a positive impact. And it can be small, and yet you can have an impact.
Absolutely.
Now, you didn't stay in Hong Kong.
I did not.
You stayed long enough, to be quite fair.
Yes.
So what triggered the change that came after?
So like many other people that were stuck in Asia during COVID, that was the catalyst for moving on to the next place. Those 3 years were quite tough. It was a lot of ever-changing regulations and with borders closed, not being able to see family members, and just a lot of uncertainty that just followed you around for a very long time. It was starting to change the experience, really. And at that, it just seemed like a good opportunity, the right time to try something else. So my husband and I have not lived in Europe. So that was, let's see what's out there. And I was very fortunate to find the community that I'm in now in Germany, at Leipzig International School, of embracing everything that is true to my values, of being an inclusive community, being a supportive community, really being proud of who we are and what we do. And that was a transition that brought me over. And it's now almost 3 years that I've been leading the kindergarten here and working with some really great people who care about kids and really want to make good people.
And that is not a given. And I speak as a parent here, that there are individuals who really, really care. So I'm delighted that there is a place where children and parents get that. And when we bumped into parents nearby the international school, and we started chatting because we just heard different languages, and then you are curious about one another, you start to chat. They were raving about the school. And obviously, a friend of mine who used to look after the group my son was in recommended you to me and said, there is a real leader. She's got to come onto your podcast. She's also someone who learns through podcasts, I believe. and then I met you. And I thought, oh my God, yes, there's really somebody who not just embraces leadership, but role models every part of leadership with care, with warmth, with principles, with values, with knowledge, the whole package, basically, right? And then I also met somebody in you who is incredibly humble. And when I remember our conversation, there was something along the lines of, I've never seen myself as a leader.
Yeah.
So, so how has your perception of leadership evolved over the years, or better said, decades?
Yes. First, thank you so much for that. It has been a journey. I was a teacher for 12 years, and that since childhood, as I said, that was my path. That was who I was. And when the opportunity to move into a leadership role came about, I immediately said no, thank you, kindly, and said, that's not me. I am my classroom. I'm the teacher. This is my group. What do you mean to step outside of the classroom? I don't understand. And I think at that time, I think my idea of leadership was very wrong. I think it was unclear to me. This idea, it was just kind of that person over there that is a leader. And so after saying no several times, I did then go into a leadership position, and I had an identity crisis. I felt like I no longer knew who I was because I was not that role anymore. I was not the teacher. And it took being talked into it. My husband asking me, what's your purpose? Why? Why are you in the classroom? And my answer was, I want to have a positive impact on the children that I work with. I want to help make them good people. And so we talked a bit more, and he said, so how many children can you impact in an academic year? So, the 20 or so that are in my classroom. So then if you become a leader and you're leading the people who are in all of the other classrooms, how many children can you impact then? Mm. And then say, okay, all right, way to use that logic against me. And that was, I think, where I was able to start imagining what a leader is and what a leader does. And it is someone who can inspire, who can guide, who can help everyone grow, children and adults. And so now my unclear kind of blob of this idea of a leader, this shadowy figure, has morphed into me believing that my role as a leader is to help people become better people, to have the impact on the children that can then bring them into the next stage of life, being a good human.
And how do you do that apart from those spontaneous moments?
Yes. For that, for me, it's all about relationships. It is first knowing me, knowing my values, knowing what my purpose is, and what I believe is the right way forward for me, knowing my areas of strength, being very transparent with what my areas of development are. I will share them all day long. And when I don't know the answer. And I also believe that it is very important to share. I do not have all of the answers. I do not know everything. I don't have the capacity, the mental, my brain's not that large. But let's figure it out together. And yeah, building those relationships, because every relationship that is established is another opening for a conversation, for someone to be able to share a worry that they have. Say, I don't quite know how to do this, or I'm having trouble connecting with this child and supporting their behaviors. Can you give me some advice? And that's hard to do without a relationship. So that's my biggest focus, is getting to know, as you know, learning about your own child, but also learning about your own team and what are their likes and hopes and desires, and what are their insecurities, what are their worries, and how we can be able to help them with those. Not solve everything, because that's not what one person can do or should do, but just being aware of them and being a space where someone can come for a conversation, feel safe, they're not going to be judged for anything, but valuing someone coming and asking for help when it's needed.
Who do you go to when you need to be held?
I am very fortunate. I have many, many colleagues that are people that I can go to. I have, educators within our building. I have the rest of our leadership team. I have my friends from Hong Kong, who my mentors from Hong Kong as well, who I can still check in with and say, let me tell you about the day I had, like another chapter of the book that we could write about things that happen in the walls of a kindergarten. But one of the things that I know about myself as well is where I feel at home, and the space and people I work with are a big part of that. And it's important for me to know that the people that I work with also align with who I am and what my hopes and values are.
Now I take you a little bit deeper. How do you know? How do you know who you are? How do you understand what your real values are? How do you know when it's time to move on?
That's great. Great question. It was very interesting. Identifying my values was not something that I had ever done like previously. It was something that I came across with my therapist probably like 5-6 years ago. And it was such an interesting process of knowing at the beginning everything's important to you, but it can't be everything that's important to you, because then none of it carries weight. So it was really thinking about, what are the moments where I feel not okay? What are the moments or the situations that happen where I'm just, don't quite like the way I feel after that? And it's usually because it's pushing up against one of your values, of something that's really important to you.
Yeah.
And when you're kind of out of alignment of those, you start to feel just not quite like yourself. And so that's giving you your first kind of warning light that something's misaligned here. And then you can start doing that deeper work. For me, it's connection, building relationships, connecting with the people around me, learning. If I'm not learning something, I'm feeling a bit stagnant. and I want to continually challenge myself. I want to keep learning more and developing myself. Not always easy, but trying to put the work in of where do I feel like I could stretch myself a little bit, and focusing on that area, asking for a lot of feedback from my team as well. I am sure I have many blind spots that I need help uncovering, and I can't do that on my own. So getting into those little bits, but it is identifying those values of really seeing, where do I start feeling not okay around what's happening around me, and digging in deeper of what are those concepts and that might be at play there.
And that is the core of self-leadership. And only when you have an understanding for yourself, and I'm with you, we all have our blind spots, right?
Yeah.
But only then can you not just identify your identity, but you can be at ease with yourself and be the best for others.
Yeah.
That's how simple as I would really summarize it. It starts with you.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, I would say you have had quite a lot of experience in leadership. You have spent time, obviously, in Florida, in Hong Kong, in China, now in Germany. Any place we forgot about?
That covers them. Yeah.
In all of these years And given the experiences that you have had, the joy and sometimes perhaps challenge to experience, what have you been learning about yourself?
Yes, I have learned a lot. Some of it I've learned, but I don't know how I got there. So some of it's just kind of been an unconscious learning. But I can see how I am wildly different than I was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even. And while there are things that change, there are the constants that are always there. And those are my values of connecting with people intentionally to make sure that the relationship, the security, the trust is there. I have really shifted in, I would say, my approach to my learning more about myself as well. That has been a big learning curve. Knowing what my areas of strength are, knowing that it's just okay to be who I am. A big piece of learning is accepting that not everyone's going to like you, and that is okay. My role as a leader is not for everyone to like me, and my role as a leader is not to make everyone happy. Because the minute we get into trying to make everyone else happy, we're losing pieces of ourselves. We're losing our alignment with our values, but we might also be losing the direction that we're bringing, for me, my school in. And we have a vision. We believe in that. We have a purpose. And sometimes that's going to be uncomfortable, and that is absolutely okay. We don't want to be comfortable all the time. And I think that has been one of my big shifts, is being comfortable with being uncomfortable, and helping other people experience that as well.
And you know what? We can't always be comfortable. We shouldn't be.
We shouldn't be.
That's where the growth happens, right? We don't want to push people into the anxiety zone necessarily, but the growth zone is where we have the sense of, this feels uncomfortable. And yet I feel safe and supported around me. There are, as you mentioned, mentors, people I can fall back onto and have conversations with, have a bit of a backup.
And it's a conversation I have when we talk about diversity a lot, of how boring would it be if we were all the same, but also how boring would it be if we were just comfortable all the time. And so it's just one of those opportunities that we have of being uncomfortable, being unaware. I know uncertainty is a hard thing to sit with, and there are some times when uncertainty is just not okay. It just doesn't feel good. Going through COVID, for example, I think we all felt that was a very uncomfortable uncertainty. But then there's the uncertainty of, I don't know how to do this project yet, but I can figure it out. And how exciting it is to try and fail so many times to see what I can learn.
And speaking of learning, even though we speak a lot about learning here, I want to highlight a really important skill, and that's the skill of letting go. Yeah, you mentioned so beautifully, not everybody will like me, and that is okay. And for me, that was also an eye-opener, a real kind of, rock falling off my chest, right? To let go of that. Who was it? Mel Robbins wrote this book, Let Them, it is called. And it's all about letting go of what people might think of you and whatnot. And I find that book so, so powerful. Some real cool tools and strategies in there. Now I'm getting to the actual point, though. I have the feeling that you had to let go quite a bit. In particular, when you mentioned this shift from being in the classroom, and now I'm leading the team members who are in the classroom. So if you have a real passion for spending time with these little ones and having an immediate impact on them, and you really purely love it, I would imagine it's quite tough to say, I'm going to let go. So how did you let go?
I think the answer is I didn't let go completely. The great thing about working in a kindergarten is the children are not going to let you be away. They will come find you. They will make sure that they come say hi to you. And I had to let go of my version of that person, that idea that I was a single or co-teacher within a classroom. And I did some reframing there. And it was letting go of that idea, but then creating a new idea of now I get the pleasure of knowing all of the children in this building. I have that pleasure of getting to know what makes them smile in the morning, how they like to be greeted, saying hello to their parents or caregivers. And so while I'm letting go of one thing, I am seeing a different version of what that can be. And letting go of everybody needs to like me or wanting everyone to like me, that idea, and getting to own and create a new version of I am going to be an authentic me. And then someone else can choose whether or not that is someone that they can relate to. And I think that's okay. And it's such a powerful thing to be able to let go of that. There are things that we cannot control, and we should never try to control someone else. Something we talk to the children a lot about. You shouldn't try to hold that control, because maybe then you can uncover a bit of a blind spot about yourself. What's the need that's happening there? But we get to be our own authentic self. And isn't that much more rewarding than playing many different versions to try to gain the approval of people around us?
Again, a moment you make me think. Yeah, no, there are so many moments where we can let go, but I loved what you said about, what's the message there for us, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm going to invite every listener to think about that for them as well. What are those moments when you hold on to something, when you're trying to be in control? What's happening there? What are your inner voices? I want to move for a moment as we are approaching slowly but surely the end of our conversation. The stage of growing up. And you and I have also spoken about Adolescence, the series on Netflix, and that I had just watched, and I think you were in the middle of it, or you had just watched it as well. And now we put all of our efforts into, co-creating great people, really good people, not great people, good people, with kindness, with confidence, with belief in themselves. And they are starting to grow up. They become teenagers, and they grow further. And that also means for us as parents, for you as educators, we've got to let go. Right? Because you can't control everything they do and hold on to that. Now, I wonder if you can share any top tips of how to be able to let go, to trust, to enable, and yet keep a good eye is even the wrong expression, but make sure you're not losing touch.
Yeah, I do think that it goes back to changing that perspective. So you are giving up control. When children get into, my age group with children is usually up to the age of 6, 7, so they're still very connected. But when you do get into those preteen years, where children are starting to find their independence and wanting to create, there's a shift in identity and they're figuring out who they are. You do have to give up that control there. You can't be there for every second of the day. You don't know everything that's happening during their lives. But I think there can be that reframe of while you're not controlling, you're still connecting. and still checking in. And it's about asking the right questions. This is something I talk with a lot of parents about. It's the usual, what did you do at school today? Oh, nothing. And I explain that it's too big of a question, because the children are then, their minds are just racing through every single thing that happened in that day. And it just becomes overload. And it was just nothing, because it's become too much, the system overload. Mm. And so having those moments of, what was a time that a friend made you smile today? What was a challenging moment you had with someone today? Was there a moment today where you felt really uncomfortable? And so it's almost a way of not having control, but opening that window for a possibility to see what might be happening in the child's life, where you're not directly, grilling them on what happened today, but it's a gentle encouragement of getting them to think about how their day is and what happened and what experiences they had that day. Because I think in those moments, children will share. And that's the opportunity for the adults to really listen deeply and carefully to see what the message might be.
Which is, again, such an important message for us. Be present.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure, like me, loads of parents do their best. Mm-hmm. And yet I catch myself on a regular basis, like, where was my mind? He was talking to me, and where was my mind now? We have a few principles. I don't want to call them rules, more for my husband than for me. He has that phone everywhere all the time. And when it vibrates, it's like, I need to get it out. So we also worked with one another on how can we remove these habits in family situations when we sit at a table and we have dinner together and can have a conversation, these small moments, I call them, with big impact, in order to be present. And now we can all fall into the space of, now it happened again. Yeah. But recognizing it, trying it again is so important. But presence is, for me, one of the really big qualities to instill at home.
Yes, that's what children are learning from us also. They're learning interactions by watching what we do. Mm. Do we always have a device next to us? Because then that becomes the norm. And that becomes the lived experience of, this is just what we do. And it's really interesting to see the interaction that children have with technology, because there are the ones that you can tell have no technology at home and the ones who regularly use it. And that's not to say one way or another is bad or the wrong choice. It's just, you can see that observation happening. And it is just, it's us first. It's, what do we want for ourselves? What do we want for the people that I'm with right now? Is this protected time? Making those, you can call them agreements, as we do in the class. What's our agreement at dinner time? Mm-hmm. This is our safe space where we put technology away. And it really is a lived experience that we just we're figuring that out every day. How are we continuing to engage with the devices around us while balancing how we engage with the humans around us?
Now, Laura, you have given us so many beautiful nuggets to think about, to take away. And here's my little challenge for you. Is there any final food for thought that you would like to leave the listeners with?
In leadership, whether you're leading a group of people, whether you're leading, your child, whether you're leading a classroom, or really leading yourself, at the end of the day, you're going to do the best that you can, which is all we ever ask for, when you know what matters most to you. Having your purpose, knowing what's important to you, having some self-awareness, which is an always developing skill, is going to help you make the small and the big decisions that you're going to feel good about in alignment with what's important to you. So identifying those things first.
Thank you so, so much. It's been a beautiful conversation. So many takeaways from my side for sure. And I'm pretty sure it was insightful for the listeners as well. And I am wishing you so much success for anything you do. And please spread your energy across the globe. So if you want to tackle another continent, please by all means do so.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for helping dig deeper into my own thinking, for helping me kind of learn a bit more about myself as well, and know that leadership is not a big scary blob that is just out there in the corner, but a very valuable thing that we all have the capacity and opportunity to do with the people that are around us.
Thank you so much. It's been a joy. And before I let you go, I didn't actually ask you, what if there were parents listening who say, I want to go to that school or kindergarten better said, that sounds fabulous. How can they get in touch?
They can find us at on our website, lis.school, Leipzig International School. We have our kindergarten. All of our information is on the website, and I would be happy to talk with, meet any parents that are around.
So do get in touch. That's what I would say. And get in touch with me if you want to share feedback, insights, key learnings. Always want to know what you took away. And for now, I'm going to say, enjoy the reflections, enjoy listening, and speak to you all again next time. Take good care of yourselves. Bye-bye.